We've been talking about how busy of an offseason this is going to be for the Milwaukee Brewers. But what about down on the farm? My man Dan Zielinski from baseballprospectjournal.com. He's here to talk all about the Brewers farm system. That's next here on Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Brewers have fallen down to 17th overall in their rankings as far as minor league systems. But, hey, that's only natural because a lot of those guys are with the parent team right now. And we're going to talk about some of these guys who could be down in the minors, maybe someone down the road who could help out at first and third base. We're going to talk about a 17-year-old kid who's turning some heads down in the minors, already drawing comparisons to Jackson Chourio. Good to have you along. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the app today. Use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. You'll win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. And as I said, who better than to bring in my guy, Dan Zielinski, Danny from baseballprospectjournal.com, covers the draft, covers the minor leagues. He's my go-to guy for something like this. Danny, hope you're having a good off season, my friend. You're looking great, my friend.
Thanks, Chuck. You too. Hope you're doing well. Excited to do this with you as always.
Oh, always appreciate you coming on. All right, I'm going to throw a couple of names off you, Dan. Guys you've talked to, guys you've covered down the road. And, we'll kind of go around and fill some of these spots. First and third base is a real big concern for Brewers fans. The Brewers have kind of an open spot, and we all like to think that maybe Ortiz is going to move to short if things fall in, and eventually there's going to be a third baseman there. Do you see anybody in the Brewer third base down the road, Mike Boeve or anybody else who you see in the minor league system that's kind of heating up for the majors right now?
Yeah, maybe not heating up necessarily, but I know the ideal replacement at third base is Brock Wilken. He's a guy the Brewers drafted in the first round in 2023. They took him 18th overall out of Wake Forest, and he's a guy that is a huge power hitter, 6'4", 225, hits for above average raw power. His biggest question, and something he kind of silenced during the 2023 season, his junior year at Wake Forest, was his swing and miss. But that's something that kind of creeped back and haunted him this past year. He was at AA, and he only hit 199. He had 17 home runs, but he struck out 133 times, had 63 walks in 405 at-bats. So he's a guy that really kind of took a nosedive a bit from his first year of pro ball to his second year. So this year 3 is going to be big for him in establishing kind of where he stands in the organization. He's someone the Brewers really like, obviously, because they took him first overall, but he's got a kind of make or break year 3 coming up. Mike Boeve is another one. I think Mike Boeve is more like a Tyler Black, kind of a guy who could be more of a utility player. Mike is someone who's flown through the farm system. He was another selection in the 2023 draft. He's more of a contact over power type hitter. Hits a lot of line drives, doesn't swing and miss a ton. The Brewers have kind of moved him around the diamond a bit. His first year of pro ball, he got some experience at second base in the outfield. He's a natural third baseman. Some questions about his arm strength, but he's a guy that I see kind of more like a Tyler Black, someone who the Brewers could play at third, first, maybe second, maybe a corner outfield spot. He struggled with some injuries in 2024, but he's someone kind of on the cusp of making it to the major leagues as well.
You said Wilken is one of those guys. This is a big year for him. What do the Brewers have to see in him? You talked about the swing and misses. Does that just go with the territory for a guy like that, or what do they want to see out of him?
Yes and no. That's exactly what they want to see, is his ability to improve against breaking pitches. The biggest question mark scouts had with Brock Wilken coming out of the draft was his swing and miss against breaking pitches, especially pitches out of the strike zone. And he, like I said, improved on that area as a junior at Wake Forest, but then this past year really struggled. So, I mean, if you're hitting 199 against AA pitching, striking out 133 times in 405 at-bats, you're going to have a tough time facing major league pitching on an everyday basis, especially in today's game where not only is a starting pitcher having 3+ pitches, but even relievers have 2 elite pitches at times or even 3 really good pitches. So he's got to shore up in that area. Sure, the Brewers expect him to have some strikeouts. They're not expecting him to be a 280 type hitter. They drafted him because of his power and because of the belief they thought he could be at least an adequate average type hitter, not swing and miss a ton. So he's really got to improve on that area if he wants to have a successful long-term major league career.
You mentioned Tyler Black. Came up here a couple of times, not really impressive. Brewers put him in the heart of the order a few times, and it's like, why are they batting him cleanup? Why are they batting him fifth? Where is he standing right now, Tyler Black? And does he have a future and fit into this first or third base scenario for the Brewers?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was high on Tyler Black coming out of college. He was a mid-major guy and really had some success early on in 2022. He did really well in 2023. He also had a solid season. And this past year, he kind of regressed between AAA and the major leagues. Like you said, he wasn't really productive at all at the major league level. And to me, he always seemed like more of a guy that would be a valuable super utility guy. Every quality major league team has one of those guys that can play 4 or 5 different positions. And I really thought Tyler Black could be that guy for the Brewers. But again, if you can't hit, like there's not a lot of value in that, especially in today's baseball where defense is less important than it maybe was 10, 15 years ago. So Tyler Black's really got to show that he can hit major league pitching. At times, when he was up with the Brewers, kind of looked a little bit lost at the plate, struck out a bit and was chasing pitches out of the zone. So again, Tyler Black, I'm assuming, is going to have an opportunity to start at the major league level next year. He's really going to have to produce if he wants to have a significant role on the Brewers next season.
Tyler Black, Brock Wilken, Mike Boeve, and of course, Ernesto Martinez. He's a guy who does a little bit of everything. Did a little bit of everything for Biloxi this past year. Wilken and Boeve, are those strictly third basemen, or they can move across the diamond? I think a Wilken guy doesn't have a lot of speed. He's 6'4". What about him playing first base down the road? Because first base is always a quagmire with the Brewers.
Yeah, I think Brock Wilken, like you said, he's a bigger guy. When I saw him play live, I thought he moved better than most people said he did. And he was able to move side to side pretty well, fielded some tough plays. He could have a future at first base. I don't think third base is a lock for him per se. I think he's got a better chance to stay there than a Mike Boeve just because he does have the arm strength to play third base, where Bove's kind of got more of a fringe arm. So both guys could be destined for first base. I think Brock Wilken has a better chance to stick there at third base long term. 2
co-pitchers of the year for the Brewers, Casey Hunt, Craig Yoho. We're going to ask Danny about that coming up here in a little bit. And the 17-year-old phenom, Jesus Mate. Where does he stand? Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Good to have you along here. We're going to have Danny Zielinski come on, break some more of this down when we return after this timeout here on Locked On Brewers. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Right now, new customers with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bet if you win. You got $150 added in your account when you win that $5 bet. FanDuel, the sportsbook, gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL. It's all in one place. You go there and you'll see the play-by-play, and you could jump in on all the action. I know live plays, you want to jump in maybe when you see a favorite, a heavy favorite, get down early, 3-7-0 early in the game. To me, that sometimes seems like that's a trigger for going into the live betting. And when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view all that live play-by-play, so much more on the same page on FanDuel.com. Join up today. You'll get started again with $150 in bonus bets when you win that first $5 bet. FanDuel.com. FanDuel, never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. You get us on Google, Spotify, Apple, wherever you download your podcast. That's where Locked On Brewers is. We're the #1 Brewers podcast on the internet because of you great Brewers fans out there as well. And, of course, our growing YouTube page. Go to Locked On Brewers on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, and always hit the like button. That always helps the podcast. Always helps the podcast when Danny Zielinski is on the show. Dan Zielinski from BaseballProspectJournal.com. We always get around to draft time, and I'm sitting here today. I'm thinking, we need to get Danny talking about the minor league system because he covers this stuff. He's so good at it. Danny, give me Casey Hunt, minor league pitcher of the year. Went 8-3, a 2.03 earned run average. Split his time with Carolina, the T-Rats, and Biloxi.
Yeah, he's a guy that it seemed like he did better the higher level he went. He's a guy that at Mississippi State really struggled with his walks and control, but now since he's been in pro ball, he's really had a really good time of limiting those walks, attacking the strike zone, and having a lot of success. A lot of that has to do with his above average slider. His fastball isn't going to blow anyone away. It sits low 90s, but he locates it well, and it plays up because he attacks the top half of the strike zone and does a really good job with that. He's a guy that I'm curious to see how quick and aggressive the Brewers are next year, because he's had some success, and I think the Brewers next year are going to be looking for some more quality arms to contribute at the major league level. I think Casey Hunt, he profiles as someone who can be more of a back end of the rotation starter. He's not going to be an ace by any means, but he's someone that I think could give you valuable innings down the line.
Well, fans, we love the name Craig Yoho. I mean, I love that name. And fans were asking, is Craig Yoho going to be brought up? Is he going to be brought up in September? He wasn't. But so where does Yoho stand?
Yeah, I was surprised they didn't bring up Yoho and Misiorowski at all last year. But towards the end of the season, the pitching kind of was clicking a bit, so maybe it wasn't necessary for them to call him up. Yoho, I really like his potential. He's got 3 quality pitches in his fastball, slider, and changeup. His changeup is close to elite, and he's someone that has generated a ton of strikeouts, even without having premium velocity, and he relies a lot on locating his pitches and then getting swings and misses with his breaking pitches. I mean, just looking at his stats for this past year, granted it's the minor leagues, but 101 strikeouts in 57 2/3 innings. That's insane. I mean, that's pretty much like 2 strikeouts in innings. So with the way the Brewers kind of rotation was this year, with kind of mixing in a bunch of guys, having some older veterans, wouldn't shock me if Craig Yoho gets a legitimate shot to make the starting rotation and even makes it next year, because I think he's got the pitch mix to be successful. He's shown it in the minor leagues, and really he has nothing left to prove at AAA.
You mentioned the Miz, Jacob Misiorowski, guy throws 100 miles an hour. I was surprised they didn't call him up, but then again, I guess I wasn't, in the sense that maybe they didn't want his innings to, they want to go too far. You know how they are. They're very careful on monitoring all the innings and monitoring and all that, and maybe that was the case. Do you see him making the team? And if you do, is he going to be like, are they going to bring him along like they did Burns, where they put him in a middle relief role? And Devin Williams was a setup guy when he first got here too.
Yeah, so last year the Brewers, towards the end of the season, they had him up at Nashville at AAA, and they mostly pitched him out of the bullpen. Part of that, if I had to guess, was to limit his innings, and part of it probably also was to help him get a little experience pitching out of the bullpen. My biggest question with Misiorowski is his inability to throw strikes at times. Last year, he walked nearly 6 guys per 9 innings. It was slightly up compared to the year before. So he's got the pitch mix. He's got the stuff. I mean, he's got a high 90s fastball, elite slider. His curveball is really good too. It's just a matter of being able to throw strikes and get guys to not necessarily rely on having guys swing and miss at pitches out of the strike zone, but also being able to throw strikes and having them swing and miss at pitches in the strike zone. So, I mean, the potential is huge with Misiorowski. It's going to come down to if he can throw strikes consistently enough, if he'll be in the starting rotation, or if he'll end up having to move to like a back end of the bullpen type role.
Dan, is that a little bit like Uribe? Guy who's got to be able to find the plate?
Yeah, exactly. We saw this with guys like Devin Williams, some other guys too. When they were coming up, they struggled with throwing strikes, and the Brewers put them in the back end of the bullpen, and they found a role there. I think Misiorowski, with his fastball slider combination, could be a huge weapon as a closer type pitcher down the line, if that's the avenue the Brewers go with. But I think the Brewers, you have a guy that's 6'7", 190. Like I said, fastball, curveball, slider, they're all at least above average, with his slider probably being elite. So it really feels like you have to give him a chance at a starting rotation spot and hope he kind of can figure out that control and command of his pitches, because the potential is sky high. Does
he need a 4th pitch?
He's got a changeup. He doesn't rely on it a ton just because those other 3 pitches are really good. Mm-hmm. if it's me, I mean, I think it's good to have the changeup just as a, off-speed pitch from time to time to kind of mix in there. If I was the Brewers, I would have them focus on those first three pitches, the fastball, curveball, and slider, really focus on tightening those up, being able to throw them for strikes, and then at some point maybe work on improving the changeup because it's there, but it's not really even average pitch at this point.
All right, Dan, the Brewers have a kid, 17 years old, Jesus Made. It's spelled Made, M-A-D-E, but I'm pretty sure it's Made. Switch hitter, already drawing comparisons to Chourio. What do you know a little bit about this kid?
Yeah, Made's a real interesting player. He's only 17 years old. He was in the Dominican Summer League this past year, but he blew everyone away with his performance. He's a guy that showed an ability to hit for average, steal a ton of bases, limit his strikeouts, and also draw some walks. Brewers only signed him for $950,000 as a 17-year-old, and that is, a decent amount of money, but when you're looking at some of these international Dominican-born players, they get millions of dollars sometimes. So for a guy only 17 years old to hit 331 and show a lot of speed, switch hitter, he's a guy that I think could, eventually be one of the better prospects in the minor leagues. The question is just, can he do it consistently, and can he do it against better competition? He's only 17 years old. He hasn't even played single A baseball yet. So he's a long ways away still, but the upside is really promising. And it's just a matter of him and the Brewers developing him into the player that he showed this year.
Dan, the Brewers' number one prospect, Everson Quero, number one prospect catcher, coming off an injury. This past year is, missed a big majority of his season. Yeah. And the Brewers already got a catcher for the foreseeable future. Contreras, they're not trading him. They'd be foolish to. He's under contract as well, under team control for years to come through 2028, I believe. Was it 2028? Yeah.
He's after the 2027 season. So
2028, yeah.
27, 28. Yeah.
Where do you see Hefferson?
Yeah, Quero, he's a guy that he's right on the cusp. If it wasn't for him getting injured in the first game of the season, he tore his labrum in his right throwing shoulder, and he was out for the year. He's an interesting guy because he's kind of the typical Brewers type catcher, star defensively, and has some question marks on the offensive side. I think he's a Gold Glover caliber type defensive catcher at the major league level. He won a minor league Gold Glove in 2023. Really what's going to set him apart as being, the everyday mainstay catcher is, can he hit enough at the major league level? So he shows an ability to hit for some average, some power. He's just got to do it consistently enough and do it at the major league level, because if he's able to at least be an average offensive catcher, he's a guy that could be an all-star at the catcher position at the major league level someday. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Brewers approach the situation. If I had to guess, because he missed all of the 2024 season, Quero will probably start the year at AAA, and then the Brewers will go from there, just to let him kind of get his feet wet again and get some innings under him. So we'll see long term, but the potential defensively at least is there for him.
I'll ask you, Danny, about Cooper Pratt. He's ranked second right now by the pipeline, MLB pipeline, second in the Brewer organization. Shortstop, played at AA last year. We'll get to him. And then the Brewers' first-round pick this past summer, Braylon Payne. He's got a cup of coffee. Didn't get a chance to do much because of the draft being at the All-Star game. We'll get to that coming up next with Dan. Chuck Friedman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Locked On Brewers, PrizePicks. PrizePicks, the best place to get real money action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long with PrizePicks. 100 times your money for as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks, over 30 states they're in right now: California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. We have Brewer fans in all those states on YouTube and on our audio downloads. So sign up today. You'll get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win. You just read the $50. You get the $50 into your account. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts. Taco Tuesday, each Tuesday. PrizePicks discount select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineup. So get on in. Again, you can win up to 100 times your cash. Just pick more or less with at least 2 players or more and get into the PrizePicks field today. PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app. Again, PrizePicks, you'll get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup with PrizePicks. Our guest today, my man Danny Zielinski from BaseballProspectJournal.com. Always a great source of information on many things, but especially the farm system, the draft picks, and all that, and what's going on down there for the Milwaukee Brewers. Cooper Pratt, shortstop, AA, second-ranked prospect, as I said, in the Brewer organization. How do you see Cooper?
Yeah, if you followed my website at all, or if you've listened to one of my interviews with Chuck in the past, you know I'm really high on Cooper Pratt. He's a guy I thought was the biggest steal in the 2023 draft. He was someone that scouts considered to be a first, more likely second-round pick in that 2023 draft. He ended up going in the 6th round to the Brewers. Part of that has to do with kind of the manipulation of signing bonus dollars and moving them around, things like that. Signed a well above average slot deal, and Cooper Pratt's been a huge riser in the Brewer system and across baseball. Really, he's someone that's only 19 years old, 6'4", 195-pound shortstop, really a 5-tool player. Someone, even though of his size, being a bigger guy, I still think can play really a quality shortstop. Above average arm strength. He's athletic. And from the offensive side, he has shown throughout the minor leagues already that he can hit. He's more of a hit over power guy as of now. He still shows quality power, but I think he's going to grow into that as he continues to mature physically. And he's someone that his play discipline kind of wavered a little bit at AA, which to me, when you're 19, 20 years old, that's kind of expected. But I think the ceiling in the future is bright for Cooper Pratt to be already at AA after 1 year of professional baseball as a 20-year-old. You got a bright future ahead. The Brewers, I'm sure, will start him at AA to begin with next season and then kind of go from there. I wouldn't expect him to make the major leagues next season, but he's someone that's quickly knocking on the door of the major leagues here in the next year or two.
Yeah, right now, I mean, we think logically that Ortiz is moving from third to shortstop and can handle himself at shortstop. Turang is set at second base. For right now, it looks like that Pratt might be blocked, depending. Who knows? A lot of things can change. But what do you think? You said they're going to start him at AA. What do you think the timetable is for him? What does he got to do to get himself up to the parent team?
Yeah, it's going to come down to the bat, as it does most of these guys. And I really think the Brewers want to get him some seasoning, get him another full year in the minor leagues, have him get some confidence that he can hit at that level. And then after next season, who knows? I think, maybe in the 2026 season, we could be looking at him getting some time in the major leagues, probably more second half of the year, 2026, 2027 by the very latest, if everything goes right and he continues to perform at a high level. Like I said, he's a high and quick riser right now, so we'll see how he does in his second full year, which is kind of really a big year because a lot of pitchers don't know you year one. Now you're kind of going back to that same level and people know who you are. So he'll be tested, but I think he's someone that can continue to move fast if everything goes right.
Dan, you and I talked when they drafted Braylon Payne in the first round out of the great state of Texas. Signed, only played 4 games in the farm system for these guys. What's your thoughts on him and for people who might have missed what you had to say the summer ago to him?
Yeah, Braylon Payne is a guy that most scouts, maybe besides the Brewers, consider to be a second-round pick. I know the Brewers are extremely high on Braylon Payne, and I think he does have a bright future ahead, a lot of upside. He's more of a prototypical leadoff, top-of-the-order type hitter, someone who's an above-average to elite runner, someone who's going to play center field long-term and be more of an average over power type hitter. I know the Brewers believe he can grow into more power as he matures physically, but I still kind of compare him to, I hate to use the word Kenny Lofton, but someone like that, someone who is known for their speed, can create some havoc on the base pads and maybe not hit for a ton of power, but drive the ball into the gaps, is someone who I think Braylon Payne is. And it'll be a bit just because he's a high school guy, and usually it takes them 3 or so years at the very least to make it to the major leagues. But a lot of upside with Braylon Payne. The Brewers are extremely high on him, and I think that's kind of why they ended up reaching for him in the first round instead of kind of waiting to see if he'd be there in round 2.
Dan, what you got coming up on baseballprospectjournal.com? Anything going on this winter on your site?
Yeah, I'm already starting interviews for the 2025 draft. I've interviewed, I don't even know, 500-600 guys in the last 10 years. So already 9 interviews in for the 2025 draft. A lot of the high-end college guys I've already talked to. Chase Lavalette, he's the #1 prospect in this year's draft from Texas A&M. That interview is going to be up on the website shortly, so definitely stay tuned for that.
Hey, man, as always, thanks for carving out some time for us here on Locked On Brewers, and we'll find an excuse to get a hold of you sometime a little bit later on. I always love getting you on the show, Dan. Continued success. We'll see you here in a couple of months.
Thanks, Chuck. Talk soon.
Dan Zielinski, my man from baseballprospectjournal.com. There's never an excuse to get Dan on the show and dropping some knowledge. Threw a lot of names off of him. Dan was just rattling off the information one after another. That's his job. That's what he does. He covers this stuff like a glove. So we get him on the show. That's going to do it for Locked On Brewers. Again, you get us on Google, Spotify, Apple, wherever you download your podcasts. We are there. And of course, go to our growing YouTube page, YouTube, search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. The Brewers did sign pitching coach Chris Hook to a multi-year contract. This deal was done on October 31st. We're going to talk more about that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Brewers. That's going to do it. My name is Chuck Freeman. Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. For your second listen, you make us the first listen, but our second listen, go to Locked On MLB. My guy Sully will have all the Major League Baseball news and what's going on with the World Series. So long, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow.